Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Black Book Thought Leader Speaker Series. Today, we will be shifting gears a little and deconstructing the ecosystem of social entrepreneurship. We have with us Ms. Saumya, who has been a social entrepreneur in India for the past 7 years. She is the co-founder of Kheyti, a social enterprise that helps smallholder farmers in India overcome income variability through affordable and modular greenhouses that are bundled with services. Ms. Saumya, welcome to the Black Book Thought Leader Speaker Series.
When I happened to come across my other two co-founders, Satya and Ayush, who had been working in agriculture. With my experience in skill development, their experience in agriculture, we kind of started talking about what should we do next. And agriculture definitely came up as one of the top things, because the migrant workers that we were also working with were all from farmer families. And the reason they were also seeking jobs in the first place was because agriculture didn't make money, which forced them to leave their villages and homes to find jobs elsewhere. So in 2015, we went back to the drawing board and said, let's start talking to farmers first, and let's see what are the problems that they're facing today. There were all of these different reasons, but then when we tried to put our brains together, we realized they were not saying the words, but all of them were kind of an outcome of climate change. So after kind of synthesizing our thoughts, we said we want to do something in agriculture, and we want to make sure that income variability in agriculture is solved, which is right now being caused due to climate change. So that's kind of like the problem statement that we got attached to. So we said we want to modify these greenhouses to make it adaptable for the small farmer. So what we did, initially, I don't think there was a lot of magic going on. We actually we started working with a manufacturer that already made greenhouses already, but we said, let's remove all the frills that you put because the size is 1 acre, right? What if a farmer family had to manage this greenhouse without any automation, without any controls, just very bare bones, dumb greenhouse, give us the dumbest greenhouse that you can make. So that's how we kind of removed a lot of the other things. We reduced the height, we reduced the size, because we definitely felt like 1 acre was an overkill for farmers that we're trying to work with. So the first version that we had was around 1/16 of an acre. That's how we were able to get the costs down. But the technology itself, we use this covering called insect net, which prevents insects from coming in. So it's not rocket science. It is a material that just makes sure that you don't have as many pests coming in. And we also have a layer of shade net, so that prevents excess heat from coming in. As you may have heard, greenhouses in the West are used to increase temperatures, but in greenhouses in India, actually have to focus on reducing the temperature. So that's the reason why we use net instead of glass or plastic, which helped us conserve costs overall.
Yeah, but
we did not create a financing product in that sense, but we created the asset and we said we want a financing product around this asset, which the banks themselves kind of put together. But Kheyti had an MOU and a contract with these banks to make sure that our farmers get loans. Market-based model. So with Kheyti, the two streams of revenue that we have is one from just the sale of the greenhouses, right? So we get a margin on every greenhouse that we sell. And the greenhouse includes all of the things like the greenhouse structure, the irrigation systems, inputs, all of that. So that's one. The second is more of a recurring revenue source, which comes from the inputs that we deliver to the farmers and the market linkages that we provide to them. So on the input side, we work with big seed companies, fertilizer companies, to make sure farmers get the right greenhouse inputs in the right quantities. And on the market side, we work with companies like Ninja Card, Big Basket, Reliance, Metro, and get commissions on the produce. So we started with reaching out to just the panchayat leaders, sarpanch, and other progressive farmers in the village. Got them convinced about the idea. We made them see our R&D greenhouses, which we had been running and testing for a year before that. Once they got on board, then I think it was easier. Initially it was that, but then recently, like I was saying, the last couple of years, we've been working a lot with these business partners. So the business partner could be an input shop deal, like owner. It could be a drip irrigation vendor. But these are people who help us get leads from the communities, and then we kind of take them through our own process where we show them our existing greenhouse, to make them talk to an existing farmer. And I think in rural India, that is what clicks the most. Like when they talk to another farmer and the farmer says that I can vouch for this, like that itself is like our clicking point. So throughout the lockdown, except for I think the first couple of weeks, where we were really struggling with logistics because we couldn't get farmers' produce from their farm to the vendors. Thankfully, it was under essential services. So after a couple of weeks, like the government also figured out like how do the passes work and who gets it, who doesn't get it. So in that sense, like all the farmers that we had in our system, except for I would say a 2-week blip, were able to continue growing, continue selling, and prices also like really dipped, I think a few weeks, but then they were also kind of back, I would say after maximum a month. But having said that, like the expansion plans that we had, like our target was to get to 1,500 farmers by December, but we couldn't do any of that. And March was like kind of our takeoff, phase. So that went to a pause because banks became very risk averse. Nobody was lending, so there was no capital in the market to basically get loans. So we had a lot of these files submitted in the bank, but offices were closed. Like I don't think banks really know how to work remotely, especially public sector banks. So that's what happened. But I would say we did a couple of things to kind of respond to the pandemic. The first one was just a more short-term response. So like I said, like the logistics that farmers need, right? Like that was shut, but Kheyti made sure we worked with the farmers that we like have greenhouses and the farmers around them to make sure that their produce was reaching the markets. And we did this pan India actually, because we already know a lot of FPOs, we know a lot of market players. So we were able to facilitate the connections between farmers that needed logistics help and the buyers. On the long-term side, we actually were working on a very low-cost greenhouse structure back in like January. So that was anyway one of our goals for the year, but we basically doubled down our efforts on that for the 6 months that we weren't really actively expanding. So the new greenhouse called Greenhouse Lite is a product that costs around 1 lakh rupees and is the same size as our existing version. So that's what we were able to come out with. On the services side, we moved to a remote model. And if you know, like Kheyti also does extension to its farmers, which is giving agronomy advice and training. That also we moved to a 100% remote model. So earlier our agronomists would actually be on the field, visit each greenhouse. But we pivoted that as well, and we've been able to manage remotely for the last like 8 months, and it's been going pretty great. Again, I would say if you want to be relevant in the sector, and agriculture definitely is one of the areas where a lot of innovation is needed because not a lot of brain power has gone in for the last several years. But overall, like, I mean, I would say if you want to really fix the needs of what the customer wants, rather than having a solution and like trying to find a problem for it, if you really want to solve the problems, you have to be innovative continuously. I think the way Kheyti kind of attracts them and retains them also is by having a very open work culture. We don't have like very structured hierarchy, like this is your boss, do sir, madam, like none of that is there. So people are really in charge of whatever they're working on. Like we want to decentralize decision making because that's the only way that we can solve the massive problem that we are trying to solve in agriculture. So that's on that. But having said that, like again, because of the location and now with the pandemic, I'm hoping like we can have a lot more remote roles as well, where people don't need to move to Hyderabad or rural India as well. But getting the word out there, I think a lot of our recruits have come from the networks that we have had as founders and the team. But at the same time, like we do need to invest a lot more effort in making sure the word is out there, right? I mean, it's easy when you are a VC funded startup. Like in agriculture, I'm sure everybody has heard of Ninja Cart and Way Cool and Clover and all of that, because like VC money gives you that's sort of marketing and outreach. But being a social enterprise, again, being funded by a lot of foundations that are not based in India, it is difficult, and especially at the like senior management level, mid management level, where people have to make that active choice of leaving a career that has been working well for them and taking this risky career and in a risky company, which is still pretty young, right? To make that. But yeah, once they're on board, I think people really enjoy that growth, that ownership, that whole family feeling that you kind of end up building because you work so closely and you're working on such an important problem. Since we have started, I think we've been trying to tiptoe around the government and its policies than actually engage with it. So I think the first and foremost is just the government subsidy model. I think the government feels that if they subsidize everything, like the problems will be solved. But I feel like if we can move from that subsidy model to a more market-based, open market model, that will definitely help agriculture. Like with the new bills coming in, I feel there will be a lot of fresh, like innovation, you said, right, in the space on each of the aspects, because we're just opening it up to businesses to make sure, like, they can put their best brains forward in this. So, and I would say the government shouldn't, it's not like, we don't need to support farmers. They should definitely support farmers. But I think if you do that as a direct beneficiary transfer rather than subsidizing farmers for everything, I think that would be a better model, right? I mean, how can the government really incentivize even companies like Kheyti to be working in agriculture, to support them, rather than being very disconnected with the startup ecosystem and thinking that they can fix it all? So I think definitely that's one. The second, I feel overall the tech infrastructure in rural India is pretty bad, and even in terms of data, right? So while they have opened up the markets, how do corporates reach out to farmers? Like nobody knows, right? And the government can play a big role in that. Talking about financing as well, right? Right now, banks are not incentivized to give small farmers loans. So how can you really fix that? Like even these NBFCs like Saumya, like while they do want, like their intent is in the right place, but because of the way the whole ecosystem is structured, like that benefit does not go to the small farmers. So I feel like the government should play a bigger role than that. Government aside, I think the ecosystem is definitely is evolving for sure. There are a lot more people wanting to work in the sector. Like people know what social enterprise is. Earlier, it would be like, what are you working in, right? I mean, they're like, is there an NGO? Like the default would be, oh, it's an NGO. Oh, you're working in a non-profit. But now all that's changed, which is good. I feel in terms of like just the funders as well, right? There's a lot more money coming in. Though primarily a lot of it is from abroad. In India, I don't think the philanthropy ecosystem is still as developed, but then there's still a lot of impact investors and even like VCs wanting to create some sort of impact, right? Because it gets them returns as well. So that's evolving, but I feel there's still a lot more work to be done. It is still not as mainstream as the regular, like, tech startup world, right?
Yep. I mean, if not anything, I hope this interaction has shown that social entrepreneurship, is rewarding. You get to put a lot of smiles on people's faces. You get to transform lives, and you don't have to necessarily do this as an NGO. You can run this as a business venture as well. And once again, Ms. Saumya, congratulations for your work with Kheyti. We will continue following Kheyti very closely in the months ahead, and we wish you and your colleagues the very best of success.
Thank you, Rahul. It's been a pleasure to be here and get all the nice questions. And do stay in touch. I mean, my email is there on the website. So you guys have any questions or any interest, like do shoot me an email. I'm happy to respond.
Thank you. Thank you.